All right, today we're going to unpack a document that honestly decides how trillions of rupees of your tax money get divided all across India. We're talking about the 16th Finance Commission report. This is basically the country's financial roadmap from 2026 to 2031, so yeah, it's a pretty big deal. Let's dive right in.
So, just so you know, our deep dive today is based on this really fantastic and super detailed summary from PRS Legislative Research. They've done a great job breaking down all the key recommendations.
So let's just start with a really basic question. We all pay taxes to the central government, right? But have you ever stopped to wonder how that huge pot of money gets divided up among all the different states? Like, who decides that one state gets this much while another state gets a completely different amount?
Well, the answer is the Finance Commission. It's this constitutional body that's set up every 5 years. And its one massive job is to recommend exactly how the central government's tax money gets shared with the states. Honestly, this whole process is right at the heart of how our country's finances work.
Okay, here's how we're going to break it all down today. We'll look at the size of the tax pie for states, then the new rules for how to slice it up. After that, we'll cover special grants for states and cities, the new financial rulebook they've proposed, and finally, what the big picture impact really is.
First up, let's talk about vertical devolution. Now, that sounds complicated, but it's really just about the most basic split. What slice of the central government's tax collection goes to all the states put together?
And the magic number is 41%. The Commission recommended keeping the state's share of central taxes at exactly 41%. The key takeaway here is continuity. By not changing this number from the last commission, it gives state governments a sense of stability and predictability, which is super important for planning.
Okay, now for the really interesting part. How is that 41% pie actually divided among all the individual states? This is what we call horizontal devolution, and this is where the 16th Finance Commission has shaken things up quite a bit.
Now, this table is absolutely crucial, especially for anyone studying for competitive exams. You might want to screenshot this. The Commission has totally reshuffled the formula. Look really closely. Tax and fiscal efforts, which used to reward states for being good at collecting taxes, is just gone. And in its place, a brand new 10% weight for a state's contribution to GDP. This is a huge, huge shift, and we're about to unpack it.
So let's break this down a bit more. Income distance, which basically helps poorer states by giving them more, still has the biggest weight. So that's the equity part. But the real headline here is that new contribution to GDP criterion. For the very first time, states are being rewarded not just for their efforts, but for the actual size and output of their economies.
But wait, the Commission's job isn't just about dividing up that tax pie. It also recommends something called grants in aid, which is basically targeted funding for states and, really importantly, for local governments.
And get this, the total amount is just staggering. We're talking 9.47 times lakh crore rupees over 5 years. That is a massive injection of funds, and it's aimed at very specific areas of governance.
As you can see, the lion's share of these grants, over 83%, is going directly to local governments in our towns and villages. The rest is set aside for disaster management. What's also really key is what's missing. The Commission has gotten rid of a bunch of older grants, basically streamlining the whole system to focus on empowering local communities.
But there's a catch. It's not just a free-for-all. To even get their hands on these grants, local bodies have to meet these 3 mandatory conditions. They need to be properly set up, they have to publish their audited accounts, and their state needs to have its own state finance commission. It's a clear push for more accountability right at the grassroots level.
And this is where you can see just how targeted these grants are. For cities, there are specific grants for stuff like sanitation and water. There are even performance grants for improving revenue. And check this out, the report actually names specific cities, like Pune, Lucknow, and Jaipur, that can get special grants for infrastructure. It makes the policy really concrete.
All right, moving on. Beyond just sharing money, the Finance Commission also kind of acts like a fiscal watchdog. It sets out a new rulebook for financial discipline, and this applies to both the central and the state governments.
And here, the Commission gets pretty strict. It's laid out a very clear path to reduce government borrowing. The target for the center is to get its fiscal deficit down to 3.5% of GDP by 2031, and for states, the annual limit is set at 3% of their own GDP.
And the report doesn't just stop with targets. No, it recommends some major structural changes.
It calls for a strict end to these off-budget borrowings, pushes for privatizing those loss-making power companies, wants a review of subsidies, and says there should be a clear policy to sell off underperforming state-owned businesses.
Okay, we've covered a ton of ground. So let's just step back for a second and summarize what all of this really means for India's economy and for how the country is run.
If you only remember 4 things from this entire explainer, please let it be these. First, continuity. That 41% share is staying put. Second, there's a major shift towards rewarding economic performance. Third, a huge focus on empowering local governments with grants that have strings attached. And finally, a really strong emphasis on fiscal discipline.
To put it as simply as possible, the core change in this whole report is this one pivotal idea. The system is moving away from rewarding states for how good they are at collecting taxes, and it's moving towards rewarding them for their overall economic contribution to the nation.
And that leaves us with a final, really big question to think about. By bringing in this new rule that benefits states with bigger economies, is our whole system of financial federalism slowly shifting its balance? Are we moving away from a model based purely on a state's needs and towards one that increasingly rewards its economic performance? It's definitely something to chew on.